It was a cold October night in 2017 when Jake and his two friends, Mike and Sarah, decided to explore the old Willow Creek Asylum. The place had been abandoned since the 1980s, left to rot in the middle of nowhere in upstate New York. Jake had heard the rumors, patients who never left, strange experiments, and whispers that echoed through the halls long after the asylum shut down. The group was into urban exploring, and this was their biggest adventure yet. They arrived just after midnight, parking their car a mile away to avoid attention. The air was heavy, like the forest itself was holding its breath. The asylum loomed ahead, its crumbling brick walls covered in ivy, windows shattered like broken eyes, staring into the darkness. Jake's flashlight beam cut through the fog as they slipped through a rusted gate, their footsteps crunching on gravel. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the creak of a loose shutter in the wind. Inside, the air smelled of mold and decay. The main hall was a maze of peeling paint and overturned wheelchairs. Their wheels rusted to the floor. Sarah shivered, pulling her jacket tighter. "This place gives me the creeps," she whispered. Mike laughed it off, but Jake noticed his eyes darting to the shadows. They decided to explore the east wing, where the patient wards were. The hallway was long, lined with heavy metal doors, each with a small barred window. Jake's flashlight flickered as they moved deeper, the beam catching faded graffiti on the walls, words like "help" and "run" scratched into the plaster. The temperature seemed to drop with every step, and their breaths came out in faint clouds. Halfway down the hall, they heard it, a faint whisper, like someone muttering just out of earshot. Jake froze, his heart pounding. "Did you guys hear that?" he asked. Sarah nodded, her eyes wide. Mike, trying to stay cool, said, "It's just the wind, man." But there was no wind inside the asylum. The whispering grew louder as they approached a door labeled Ward C. It wasn't words. Not exactly, just a low rhythmic murmur, like a conversation in a language they couldn't understand. Jake's hand shook as he reached for the door handle. It was ice cold, and the door creaked open to reveal a large, empty room with rows of rusted bed frames. The air felt thick, like they were wading through water. Then the whispering stopped. Dead silence. Sarah grabbed Jake's arm, her nails digging in. "Let's go," she whispered. But before they could move, a shadow darted across the far wall, a human shape, too tall and thin to be normal. It moved fast, vanishing behind a bed frame. Mike swore under his breath, his bravado gone. They backed toward the door, but then the whispering started again, louder, coming from all around them. It wasn't one voice anymore, it was dozens, overlapping, hissing, like a crowd of invisible people circling them. Jake's flashlight flickered out, plunging them into darkness. Sarah screamed and Mike grabbed her, pulling her toward the door. But the door wouldn't open. Jake pushed with all his strength, but it was like the handle was welded shut. The whispers grew into a deafening roar, words now clear. "Stay with us." Jake's chest tightened, his breath shallow. He felt something cold brush against his neck, like fingers grazing his skin. In a panic, Mike threw his shoulder against the door, and it finally gave way, spilling them into the hallway. They ran, the whispers chasing them, echoing through the asylum until they burst out into the night. They didn't stop until they reached the car, their lungs burning. When they looked back, the asylum was silent. But Jake swore he saw a figure standing in one of the broken windows watching them. They never went back to Willow Creek, but Jake says that sometimes, late at night, he hears faint whispers in his apartment. Too soft to make out, but always there, just at the edge of hearing. In 2019, Emily was a college student working on a documentary about abandoned buildings. She'd always been fascinated by the history of places left behind, and when she heard about the Greystone Asylum in New Jersey, she knew it had to be her next project. The asylum had a dark past, rumors of patient abuse, illegal experiments, and a fire in the 1970s that killed dozens. Most of the building was boarded up, but Emily had a contact who knew a way in. She went alone, which she later admitted was a mistake. It was just past 11 p.m. when she parked near the asylum's back entrance, a rusted fire door hidden behind overgrown bushes. The night was still, the only sound the crunch of leaves under her boots. Armed with a camera, a flashlight, and a voice recorder, she slipped inside, her heart racing with excitement and a hint of fear. The asylum's interior was a wreck. Collapsed ceilings, exposed wires and floors covered in broken glass. Emily's flashlight cast long shadows as she moved through the lobby, her camera capturing the eerie stillness. She narrated softly into her recorder, describing the faded murals on the walls and the faint smell of mildew. She decided to head to the 3rd floor where the isolation rooms were. The stairs creaked under her weight, each step echoing in the empty building. When she reached the 3rd floor, the air felt heavier, like it was pressing down on her. The hallway was narrow, lined with doors that had once held the most dangerous patients. Most were open, revealing empty rooms, but one door at the end of the hall was different. It was padlocked, the chain rusted but intact. Emily's curiosity got the better of her. She set her camera down, angling it to record as she examined the lock. It was old, but it looked like it had been touched recently. There were no cobwebs, no dust on the chain. She reached out to test it, and the metal was warm, almost hot. Despite the chilly air, she pulled her hand back uneasy. Then she heard it, a faint scratching, like nails dragging across wood, coming from inside the room. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. The scratching stopped, replaced by a low, guttural moan, like someone in pain. Emily's first instinct was to run, but she forced herself to stay, whispering into her recorder, "There's something in there." She aimed her flashlight at the door's small window, but it was boarded up from the inside. The moaning grew louder, joined by a rhythmic thumping, like someone pounding on the door. Emily backed away, her camera shaking in her hands. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling. The response was immediate, a scream, raw and inhuman, that made her stumble back. The door rattled in its frame, the padlock clanking violently. Emily turned to run, but her flashlight caught something on the wall beside the door, a smeared handprint, fresh and red like blood. She hadn't noticed it before. She grabbed her camera and bolted down the hall, the scream echoing behind her. The stairs seemed to stretch endlessly as she ran, her footsteps drowned out by the sound of the door shaking, as if something was trying to break free. When she finally reached her car, she locked the doors and sped away, her heart pounding. When Emily reviewed her footage later, she noticed something chilling. In the moment she'd angled her camera at the locked door, the lens caught a reflection in the glass, a pale face with hollow eyes, staring directly at her. The worst part? She was alone in the asylum that night. In 2021, Ryan and his cousin Alex were amateur ghost hunters, chasing stories for their small YouTube channel. They'd heard about the St. Mary's Asylum in Ohio, a place notorious for its children's ward, where young patients were supposedly subjected to cruel treatments in the 1960s. The asylum had been abandoned for decades, but locals claimed they heard children's laughter at night. Ryan and Alex thought it would make for a great video. They arrived around 1 a.m., the moon hidden behind thick clouds. The asylum was a sprawling complex, its towers looming like skeletal fingers against the sky. They entered through a broken window, glass crunching under their sneakers. The air inside was stale, thick with the smell of rot. Ryan's flashlight swept across the lobby, revealing faded posters about mental health, their edges curling like dead leaves. They headed straight for the children's ward, guided by a map they'd found online. The ward was in the basement, accessible by a rusted metal staircase. As they descended, the temperature dropped sharply and Alex zipped up his hoodie. "This place is wrong," he muttered. Ryan brushed it off, but he felt it too, a sense of being watched. Toys littered the floor, broken dolls, a single roller skate, a teddy bear with one eye missing. Ryan's flashlight flickered and he cursed, smacking it against his palm. Then they heard it, a soft giggle like a child playing nearby. Ryan froze, his breath catching. "Alex, you hear that?" he whispered. Alex nodded, his face pale. The giggle came again, closer now, from one of the rooms down the hall. They moved slowly, their flashlights casting jittery beams. The air felt electric, like a storm was brewing inside the walls. They reached a room with a door slightly ajar. Inside, the floor was covered in crayon drawings, stick figures with wide, empty eyes, some holding knives. Ryan's stomach twisted as he pushed the door open. The giggle stopped, replaced by a faint humming like a lullaby. It was coming from the corner, where a small chair sat rocking slightly, as if someone had just left it. "Ryan, let's go," Alex whispered, his voice shaking. But Ryan stepped forward, his flashlight landing on the chair. It stopped rocking, and the humming ceased. For a moment, everything was silent. Then from behind them, a child's voice whispered, "Why are you here?" They spun around, but no one was there. The hallway was empty, their flashlights revealing nothing but peeling paint. Then the lights went out, both flashlights at the same time. Darkness swallowed them, and the giggles started again. Now from all directions, overlapping, growing louder, Ryan felt something small and cold grab his hand, like a child's fingers. He screamed, yanking his hand away, and bolted for the stairs, Alex right behind him. The giggles chased them, echoing through the basement as they stumbled up the steps. They didn't stop running until they were outside, collapsing in the grass, gasping for air. When they checked their footage later, the audio was filled with children's voices, whispering words they couldn't make out, except for one clear phrase: "Stay and play." Ryan and Alex never returned to St. Mary's, but Ryan says that sometimes, when he's editing late at night, he hears a faint giggle from his headphones, even when the audio is muted. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.